Wonderful. All right, we have audio on the back? Yes? Okay, very good. Excellent. All right, let's get to the right page here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call of board members, please.
Chair Kevin Seifried.
Present.
Vice Chair Charles Ernst.
Present.
Commissioner Kenny Each. Commissioner Jason James.
Here.
Commissioner Peggy Boulay.
I thought.
Commissioner Bob Peshon.
Here.
Commissioner Michael McDermott.
Here.
We have quorum.
All right, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, the two items, regarding the small-scale land use amendment as well as the rezoning for the White House Inn properties, they have been rescheduled for the next Planning Commission meeting.
All right, thank you. We're ready for approval of minutes of June 20th. Do we have a copy for the chair to sign? Thank you. Chair will call for a motion to approve the minutes of.
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner McDermott, seconded by Commissioner Ernst. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. We'll sign this. All right, Madam Secretary, there's that. All right, at this time, do we have any communications? Apparently none. All right, assume none, right? Yes, no? No, we have no communications. I believe, Mike, you have an announcement you need to make?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, because of a conflict. Yes, it is. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Yeah? Okay, Mr. Chairman, because of a conflict of interest in this particular matter, I have to recuse myself, and appropriate paperwork I've given to the attorney for the board. Okay.
All right, thank you, Mike. You're excused.
Yes.
We have no continued public hearings, and so at this time, we'll go to item 5, public hearing for PC 5-17. This is a resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, approving an application for a conditional use permit in substantially the attached form, allocating 62 residential units from the primary pool of 2,500 of floating residential units reserved for the neighborhood redevelopment overlay in RO district for a proposed 6-story, 67-unit multifamily residential development on the 1.1 acre real property generally located at 840 Northeast 130th Street and specifically identified with Miami-Dade County folio number 06-2230-013-0110 in accordance with Article 4, Division 4, Section 4-305 and Article 3, Division 4, Sections 3-402 through 3-407 and 3-302 of the City of North Miami Code of Ordinances, Chapter 29, entitled Land Development Regulations, providing for an effective date and for all other purposes. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Commission, members of the...
Sure. So, Mr. Chair, we should swear witnesses, including staff and all persons who intend to speak at this hearing. Please stand, raise your right hand. Attorneys do not need to unless they're testifying. Yes, staff as well. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this proceeding. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Be seated, please.
And good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commissions and everybody's in attendance tonight. This application is for conditional use permit on a vacant 1.1 acre site, vacant site located at 840 Northeast 138th Street. The applicant is recently purchased the property and intends to develop that with a 67 multifamily not apartment, because the original plan submitted state apartment, but the applicant just clarified and then that it's going to be for condo units. But anyway, will be for multifamily residential development for 67 units and 6 stories. And the underlying zoning of the property is residential. However, back in 2007, doing the evaluation and appraisal report to amend the comprehensive plan, doing the data inventory analysis, the consultant realized that although most of the single-family neighborhoods in the city had a density of 7.1, but the built environment had a density of 3.1, which creates an excess of residential units which were already accounted for on the future land use map. So what the city did with those units, they created two pools, a primary pool and a secondary pool. The primary pool was reserved for a new overlay district they created, which is they name the neighborhood redevelopment overlay district. I have some maps here, and then basically encompassing from northeast 123rd to northeast at first 135th, and then it was later amended to go all the way north to 137, and then basically stops at northeast 11th Avenue, and kind of, right along 6, just west of 6th Avenue, and then later down to 125th to kind of Memorial Highway. So what that does, the city created that pool to encourage, high-intensity development, mixed-use development within the around the downtown area. There was a secondary pool that, where any properties can apply for floating densities as well, or floating units, but up to a maximum of 25 units. But within the NRO itself, the maximum density that you could apply for was 90, and the maximum height was 90 feet as well, but they could apply for a bonus height of 40 feet, which would, the total amount of height allowed would be 130 feet. So this is the basis of the application, because that was established in the complaint, and then when the city amended, the land development regulations, the LDRs, in 2009, the regulations were included in that LDR to allow the transfer of those units from either the primary pool and the secondary pool to any properties, whether they're located within the NRO or outside the NRO. So this is kind of the background, with the NRO, and then those two pools, they were created. So this application came recently to the city. For the applicant, they have a 1.1 acre site. They're applying for 62 bonus density to create a 67, because by right, the property would allow 5 units. And so they're applying for 62 residential bonus, to build those properties. And then the criteria in the code for that, it can be found under Article 4, Division 2, Section 4-305 of the city's LDR. And as well, to allow the transfer of those bonus density to properties located within the NRO. But the comprehensive plan and the LDR specifically state that that transfer should be done to a conditional use permit. And the article, regulating the granting of conditional use permit, the regulations can be found under Article 4, Division 3, Section 306 of the LDRs. So that being established, this property came in and we viewed it, based on those criteria established for the granting of units. The applicant, in order to create that 67 apartment units, has offered to apply for lead building standards found under Article 4, Division 3, Section 4-305. it can apply for a maximum of 25 for green sustainability building, a maximum of 25 for transit-oriented development, and a lot of other, 5 to a maximum of 5 for up to 90, so a maximum of 40 outside, the TOD and the green building standards to get to the 90. They only applying for 62, and then they have met the criteria and to get those 62. So staff have also reviewed this article, this application based on the standards set in the code for CUP, whether or not the application is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan, and then which we found to be consistent because the comprehensive plan establishes that NRO, and then with the purpose and intent, we develop that a section that of the city. Also, the future land use element, there are some policy, basically objective 1.12 of the comprehensive plan, that the city should direct growth in the NRO district in a manner that achieves economic development, provides housing choice, and supports multimodal transportation. And then there also the economic element of the comprehensive plan, in that the application would help further the economic by improving the economic viability of the city to provision of balanced employment and housing opportunities, attraction and retention of business. Secondly, as well as the housing element of because the city, according to the city 2015-2019 consolidated plan, prepare for the HUD, the city has an aging housing supply, which means that many of the units are likely to need improvement and may contain lead-based spend. The consolidated plan also suggests that these older housing units may not even be suitable to serve persons with disability. So this CUP application, staff believe that will help, therefore, provide new housing units meeting the standards of modern living within the NRO in furtherance of the objective of that stated objective of the city's comprehensive plan. Another criteria staff looked at whether or not the application complies with the district regulation applicable to the proposed development, including the bonus provisions in section 4-405. And as mentioned earlier, the applicant has met those criteria. They are providing, they can get some of those units to TOD standards, green building standards, as well as a host of other standards listed in that section to meet on the number of units that they're proposing. Other criteria is whether the application is consistent with the applicable development standards in these LDRs. The applicant have submitted some conceptual plans, even though those plans are for information purpose, but however, they were submitted and staff review those plans to see whether or not they meet the transition standards set forth in the LDR. And then those conceptual plans, based on the transition standards set back and so forth, and staff believe that we will meet the standards. However, more concurrency determinations and a much, comprehensive review will be done if the CUP is approved, and then when they come back for the development review site plan application. In other standards, as you can see, whether the parcel, is adequate in size and shape to accommodate all the development features. So staff believe that, in order to design or development concept that meets the intent and purpose of the district to compatible transition standards, that what the applicant is proposing, will actually meet that purpose of the code. So, there are a total of 11 criteria. I'm not going to read it, but the staff report is available, and members of the Planning Commission have read it. So, in essence, we believe that this application meets the standards of the LDR, is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and staff, is making a recommendation that for approval of the city of this application or recommendation that the City Planning Commission make a recommendation for approval to the City Council and forward it, for further review. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, before we listen to the applicant, I need to ask each and every one of our board members if you have had any ex parte communications or disclosures relative to this particular agenda item. If you have, you need to announce them so we are aware of your ex-parte communications. Left and right, no ex-parte communications, none?
No.
None? Okay, fine, very good, thank you. All right, at this time, we'll hear from the applicant. State your name, sir, and your office.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Mr. Attorney, staff, and good evening to everyone here tonight. And I'll try to, while I'm addressing the Commission as much as possible, see if I can also turn whenever possible to talk to the people who've taken their time to come out here. We appreciate everyone's attendance. And if you have any trouble seeing some of the things that the Commission is able to see that should be on screen, please let us know, and we'll try to make sure that we turn that so you can be informed as well. Mr. Chair, my name is Joseph Geller. I'm with the law firm of Greenspoon Martyr. I think I'll give the Lauderdale instead of the Brickell address. It's 200 East Broward, Suite 1800, Fort Lauderdale, Florida 33301. And I'm the attorney for the owner of the property, Oz and BF LLC, a corporation. And, okay, thank you. And presenting tonight with me will be the architect for the project, who will introduce himself also later, but that's Mr. Patrick Valent, and the owner's representative, who is also an engineer, and that's Mr. Jamie Akbas. We appreciate your time and your consideration tonight, and I think that we have a very good project to present to you tonight, and I'm hopeful that by the time we're done, that the members of the public who are here as well will have some of the concerns that they have addressed, and I'm very hopeful, frankly, that people are going to leave here tonight maybe with more information than they came. Well, certainly I hope that, and also with a lot of concerns and fears that they may have allayed and answered, and I'm hopeful that the Commission will vote in favor of this very good project and recommend it to the City Commission. So I'm not going to take a great deal of time here. I'd rather people get to hear from the architect who drew these plans, but let me just say, I think this may be, and the staff I'm sure will correct me if I'm wrong, I think this may be the first time a new project has come before you since the new land development regulations were finalized over the summer, and particularly something called the NRO, the Neighborhood Redevelopment Overlay, has been approved. Is this the first under NRO since the approval?
Not on the, that's the first application since the LDR was
Yes.
approved, but not for the NRO. NRO was established in 2007.
Yes, but under the new provisions, this is in an NRO area. The city has determined in adopting the NRO and the new comp plan amendments and the land development regulations that we should see some additional kind of very controlled development in the city. This is to address a problem where the city needs housing for its residents, and it needs some economic revitalization, and in particular, the corridor along West Dixie Highway could use some investment and could use some changes to the way it's trended over the last few years. This project is exactly what the NRO has called for. This project is exactly what is within that new attempt to help the city develop. It is located, as I'm sure the residents here know, about half a block off West Dixie Highway, right at 130th Street, just going east. I want to put a couple of things to rest right at the beginning. I personally think affordable housing is a wonderful thing. I'm not against affordable housing. I think it's a needed and necessary thing, but please be clear. This project is not that. This project is not affordable housing, and I don't want to, or workforce housing. I don't want to say those like those are bad things, but that's not this project. This project is not a rental project. I know there's confusion about that. These are not rental apartments. This is a condominium with units that will be offered for sale, and people are going to buy them and be owners. And as owners, they will have a very large interest in the well-being of this community. It is probably for many people going to be their first home ownership, their first thing that they've owned, because they are going to be reasonably priced. Just, not to get ahead of ourselves, but probably in the $250,000, $275,000, maybe $300,000 range. That is substantial. It's a substantial investment, but it's also within the means of a lot of people who want to own and stop renting. So, to be clear, not affordable housing or workforce housing, though I don't think those are bad things, and not a rental community. This is a home ownership, a condominium building. The building will be, as projected, as you'll see, as you'll hear from the architect, 6 stories tall, and will consist of 67 units. Now, 5 for the underlying zoning, 62 are being requested. One of the 2 things we want you to approve, besides conditional use, is the 62 bonus units. The 62 units and the 6 stories are much less than would be entitled to be built on this property under the neighborhood redevelopment overlay. As Mr. LeBrun, and we thank him for all the work he's put in to help with this project, as we've submitted and the staff has responded promptly, and we appreciate that level of attention from your staff. This project could be, I believe it was 130 feet high, if I heard correctly, and it's 75. So it's only a little more than half of what's permitted. And this project, this site would accommodate at 90 units per acre bonus, 99 bonus units plus the 5. This could be a 104 unit condominium, 130 feet high. It is a 75-foot condominium with roughly a little less than 2/3 of the units that the NRO said could be accommodated on this site. This isn't stuffing the site. It's not packing things into it. It is a very reasonable and very modest request to do what the city has said it wants, which is to have new investment in this area. We think that this is going to cause every property around this project, both on West Dixie Highway and the residential neighborhood that this is in, to have increased property values. Sir, with all deference, people investing that kind of money in this property, we think it's going to do a lot to bring the property up. This property, and everybody's entitled to their opinion, but if my clients didn't think this was a good investment, they wouldn't be looking at this site. This is what the city has said it wants. This is why you have an NRO. And let me put one other thing to rest. It's not a mixed-use project. There is no commercial coming into this project. There are no shops on the ground floor. There's no shopping. That's not the case. This is strictly a residential development, 67 units, 6 stories tall. A couple of other points. The reason, and there's a very thorough chart that's included in your staff report that talks about some of the things that this project is doing to help to earn those bonus units. For one thing, it is going to have LEED Green Building certification. It's going to have a number of amenities that help with sustainability, including places for electric cars to park, recycling receptacles built in. It's going to include not only a tree management program, and we've already met with staff to talk about being able to preserve some of the specimen trees that are on the property to the extent that we can, but it's also going to have a very heavily landscaped, which Mr. Valent will show you, the architect, including a number of additional trees that are going to be planted all around the perimeter of the property. It is close to not only pedestrian connections, but it receives bonus units because it's less than a quarter of a mile from a sheltered bus stop. This is something that will increase the availability and use and usability of mass transit in the city. There will be bike racks. There's for an additional pedestrian circulation. They're building bike lockers, a number of open space amenities. Anyone who looks at it will see that the building design is an urban design component. It's very articulated. It's not a square box. It's got a lot of interesting architectural features. And the utilities for the project will all be underground. And finally, there's some units that are going to be part of the bonus calculation because it's going to have public art in public places. And there's a very detailed listing of the things that are being done here in order to earn this bonus. So let me just say that we think this is a real asset to the city. It'll bring in, as the economic analysis that we've submitted to you shows, a substantial amount of additional tax dollars that the city can use to help keep its millage rate down. We've submitted a utility study that shows that the project will be able to accommodate all the demands that it may place on the utility system. We've submitted a detailed traffic analysis that shows that the actual impact that this project will have, that this building will have on traffic at peak hours is rather minimal. All of the parking for the building is being contained on the site. It's a condominium, doesn't sell without that parking. We're not asking any kind of variance. Not a parking variance, not a setback variance. We are going to keep our parking on site. There are a number of other amenities that the residents will enjoy, including a pool. This is intended to be a high-end, very desirable condominium development, and we're confident that all of the people who purchase at this location will do so with the intention of making sure that this property is very well kept up, very well maintained, that it has good security, and that it is an asset to the community and helps bring about the redevelopment that the city has said it wants with the NRO. Before I turn it over to Mr. Valent, I just do need to mention to the board, and I hope that, no offense, Mr. Chair, I was to leave for a meeting in Tallahassee earlier today. I delayed it so I could attend tonight, but probably before this meeting ends, I'm going to need to leave for the airport because the last flight leaves earlier than I'd like it to. So I apologize in advance if I'm not here for the final word. I hope when we get down to that final word, you'll think of the things I have had to say. Before I turn it over to the architect, I'd be happy to answer any questions from the commission or staff. If not, I'll call on Mr. Valent.
You can ask the square footage issue of the architect.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to call up the architect, Mr. Patrick Valent.
Well, I guess I'll ask the architect. I'll ask the architect.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
evening, members of the commission. My name is Patrick Valent, Valent Architect Corporation. I'm located at 7480 Fairway Drive in Miami Lakes, Florida. I am the architect of record for this project. Good evening to all the neighbors who have come out tonight and to the staff. I don't have a lot to elaborate on as far as the height and the NRO overlays and everything. I will tell you, as an architect, we look at every site, every building as a unique, I'll say, challenge. And as Mr. Geller mentioned, when we first were approached with this project from the developer and owner, we looked at it as a possibility of having 90 units, 130 feet high, mixed-use commercial, pedestrian parking, pedestal parking, and all the things this building could have. So we then took everything into account. I personally walked the neighborhood. I met with staff probably 10 times by now, and we tried to find the right fit here for this transitional area. So, understanding that this particular project is a condominium building, a taller building in a neighborhood that's a transitional area, we get that, we understand that. So we tried to be as sympathetic as we could. I know that I can't solve everyone's desires, but some of the things that we tried to work into this system, and I'm not sure how much you guys can see here. Can you see on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So some of the things we tried to do, and I'll kind of maybe point them out here, we tried centering the building a little bit to create a little bit of a buffer, both from the road, from 130th, and from the neighbors in the rear, with the understanding that we could have maximized this a little bit more and created more units by pushing it right to the setbacks, but just didn't seem appropriate. I know that doesn't help for a lot of people who are right there up next to it. I get that. But there was an attempt to do that. And some of the other things we tried to do was we tried not to bring commercial into this neighborhood. Understanding that we're right off of Dixie, there is a commercial transitional area. We could have got quite a few bonus points by bringing commercial in. It was discussed in length with staff. Would we bring in cafes, restaurants, and shops in there? It just didn't seem appropriate for the amount of traffic it would be generating. So we really wanted to keep it to a condominium project. Some of the other things we wanted to do here is we met with Public Works, and we were trying to figure out how we can keep the traffic flow as minimal as possible, not having people dropping off, stopping their cars, leaving them with their flashers on and things of that nature. So that's why we came up with
Could you put that board on the other tripod?
Oh,
All right, is that better for the cameras? Yes, no?
they just move it.
All right.
So what we attempted to do here was create a corner element here that had the lobby and a drop-off area. So we worked hard with Public Works to come up with this drop-off solution here. So the idea here was that when people were coming and going, or they were just dropping somebody off or picking them up, they weren't stuck in the street, blocking all the neighborhood. I know it's not a consolation to completely solve the problem, but it's an attempt to really keep everything, all the amenities and all the traffic flow within the property. And as you can see from the parking structure itself, it's completely screened by trees, and when you look at the elevations and look at the package, you'll see that our attempt was made to really screen that parking. And then the last thing on the parking, okay, great, was, we chose to keep it all surface parking, and we chose that for a reason. So if we wanted to go with the higher density project and get the extra height, we would have had to go with pedestal parking, which is above ground parking. Just didn't seem appropriate for this neighborhood. I mean, we looked at it, cost-wise, cost-benefit-wise, probably would have been a good solution. But again, it didn't seem appropriate to build a parking structure in the middle of a neighborhood. So the attempt here was to keep everything at surface level, keep the amenities in the back there as a buffer. We tried to make the amenities, which is the pool area you see there, as the buffer. And when you see the landscaping plan, you'll see that we're trying to really landscape this property well. I understand that it has quite a few mature oaks, and being a sort of a tree hugger myself, I get it. I've already met with staff. I've met with Ms. Plass, and there's going to be a pretty major movement here to meet with an arborist and see how many of the species we can maintain, because there's some beautiful oaks on property, and how many can be actually relocated, and if not, mitigated. We want to put back more trees than are there now, and I get that you can't put back a 100-year-old oak. I completely understand that. But we can actually do some good things in the plaza area. We can do some nice transitional things in the rear and on the side that actually create a nice screen buffer. The intent here is not to have a backyard with a brick or a wood wall and then just see parking. That's not the intent. The intent is to create a transitional area to at least make it feel like it's somewhat, I don't want to use the word fits in, but it's somewhere is a transition to what we have on Dixie Highway to a residential area, which is what it is. It's a transitional area. We tried to be sympathetic to that, not always, satisfying everybody. But please understand that, going from 90 units down to 62 units, going from 130 feet down to 74 feet, I mean, that was a compromise to try to make it at least seem a little bit more appropriate for the Dixie transition. I don't want to get into too many more of the details of that. I'd rather just take questions from the community or from staff.
Hello, Peggy Boulay. I have a question about the units. In all the documents that I reviewed, I'm not sure if any of the commissioners caught that,
Yes.
but we didn't see, or I didn't see, the square footage of each unit.
Yes,
So could you?
yes, hang on one second. We actually did turn in the unit plans, but a little bit late, and I did not have the square footage on there. It's a
Okay.
mixture of one-bedroom and two-bedroom units. The one-bedroom units are 636 square feet net, and the two-bedroom units are 912 square feet.
Mm.
750 is required? Okay. well,
That
not a
was my
problem.
next. So is that possible to?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can definitely accommodate that.
And the two bedrooms would remain 9. What was it? 930. What was it?
912 right now.
912.
Again, that's the net square footage. That's without the air conditioning areas, things like that. So we're have no problem making the 750 work for the one bedroom. And just so you understand, it's primarily two-bedroom units. So the mix right now is 58 two-bedroom units to only 9 one-bedroom units. That's the current mix that we're using. So it's primarily a two-bedroom or more family-oriented project.
And would 920 be out of the question?
No,
Would
not
that
at
be doable?
all. Very doable. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other questions for the architect?
Yes.
Commissioner Reach?
The drop-off point, that's gonna be at what location?
Okay, I'm gonna come over here for a second.
I'm looking at the scale here, and is that gonna be at 9th and 130th Street?
It is. It's right there on the corner. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
No.
Can you? Yeah, 9th and 130th on the corner there. The drop off right there.
Okay, the other question I have right now is, what kind of curtilage are you gonna put around the parking area and the property? I see it chain link fence. Are we gonna put a wall?
Yeah, we've
What
actually
are
been-
we doing there?
That was a comment that came up from staff. It was one of the comments that came up with staff. They would prefer us to use some type of wall rather than we're not going to do chain link fence. So it most likely would be a wall.
Okay, how about the parking? Is that, you're gonna have a gate for the people to go in and out, or is it gonna, I mean, is it, you made a statement before.
Mhm.
Or the councilor made a statement, there's gonna be high-end condos.
Right.
Well, I'm a little bit miffed here. When you're talking about high-end condos, you're telling me that you're gonna have 636 square feet and 912 square feet. Now, what did we do on our land use regulation? I thought the minimum was 700. Did we change it?
The minimum is 750, however, within the NRO, 20% of the units can go up to 550.
Say that again,
The minimum is 750, but however, within the NRO, 20% of the units within our proposed development can go up to 550.
So the 20% would be what? The balconies, or what are we talking about? I lost you on that.
No, the minimum is 750.
So then how do we come to 636?
He already changed it.
We've already said that we'll accommodate that.
Say that again?
We already said we'll accommodate the 750.
So we are gonna go with 750?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's gonna be for, the
And
what
the
are we
two
gonna do for
bedrooms
the,
are 920.
for the two-bedroom?
The two
920.
bedrooms are right now at 912. She asked if we can go 920. We had no issue with that at all. In fact, it'd be a better unit.
What kind of amenities are we gonna have in these? Are we gonna have washer dryers in the units, or what
Yes.
are we doing?
Yeah, so right now, the units haven't been fully designed, but we're gonna be having air-conditioned washer, dryer, balconies. There will be a swimming pool on property, open space. We're gonna have a gym and office on the second floor, which is already shown in your package. So there'll be a complete amenity area there.
How many elevators?
Right now, there's two.
2 elevators? Okay, getting back to my earlier question,
Yes, yes,
we're looking for a wall around the
Understood.
property, not a chain link fence.
understood.
Okay, secondly, when you're gonna park the vehicles, is there gonna be a gate, or is this just gonna be open? What are we doing?
No, we've already been talking to staff about doing a screen fence or something of that nature. It most likely will be gated and have a card reader.
Well, if you go to Sixth Avenue, you're gonna see every apartment house over there gated and fenced.
Yes,
So, you know. Okay, yeah, that,
Mr. Chair, can we have a statement that people
Wait,
can
wait,
call
just-
out?
you'll have your chance, guys, please. Let me,
yes.
I'm
But
thinking,
to answer your question,
okay.
we will have screen walls, I'm sorry, screen
Okay.
fencing and gates, yes.
With regards to the swale area, okay? We wanna make sure that we're not parking in the swale area.
Well, there's not a swell area on this property. but
Okay,
it's
well,
Understood.
I mean,
There's
I'm
side-
looking around it, and
There's sidewalks, sir.
you have the sidewalk, but
Right.
after the sidewalk, you're gonna have a swale area.
We'll
are
have
you
a
not?
landscaped area, which is full of trees, landscape area full of trees, yes.
Now, is that gonna be curb and gutter with high curbs around the swale area?
Yes.
Like I'm seeing going in on 16th Avenue where people can't park there?
I don't know what Public Works is gonna require us to do, but
Well,
we certainly will meet with them.
You know, I'm looking at it, I wanna see development, and I'm looking at it through the eyes of if I was across the street living from this property.
Right.
Okay, and what I wanna make sure is all of a sudden you're taking a residential area and we're gonna put a high-rise there,
Sure,
and we wanna make it as pleasant for the people that live there.
understood.
All right, and I certainly wouldn't want to see a collection of cars parked in front of this building if I'm living across the street. And the other thing that concerns me
Mhm.
is the lighting.
Right.
I don't want the lighting to be intruding into my backyard or gleaming, from the parking garage across the street and into the residential area.
And we've already been asked to provide a photometric study, which we did, to keep all the light inside, which we've already graded for DRC, so absolutely, that will be dealt with.
We tried to get a couple of things passed in the last LDRs about parking garages. You know, you mentioned you don't want to go high. I have no problem with pedestal parking, providing the parking garage is designed nicely where you don't see it.
Right.
Instead of looking at some ugly albatross on there with a bunch of cars, lights shining on it, and that's all these people have to look at
Understood.
when they're sitting in their backyard. And that's not right. That's exactly what we want to stay away from.
Right, and you also understand that when we created the design here, there is no really rear building to the building here. So the units themselves are on all sides. So when you look at the unit layout, the rear of the building has the same balconies, has the same views as the front. So there is no back to this building.
Let me just be clear also in response to the question, that we are undertaking on the record because of the combination of sidewalks that are gonna be there and heavy landscaping, we're agreeing on the record that it will not be possible for people to park on, there is not really gonna be a swale, but that's something we are agreeing to on the record, I want to.
All right, my other question is again with the lighting and the underneath lighting, especially at night
Yes,
in the parking garage.
yes,
Is that going to be shielded from the residential area
yes, it has to by code,
on all sides?
all sides. Photometric studies have to be
Okay,
submitted and have to be
what is
approved.
what is the distance? I drove by that neighborhood. I've driven by that neighborhood 1,000 times. But what is the distance between the back of the project, and it was in here, and the residential area? Let's see, you're going to go on 130th Street. Let me orient my map to the houses on 129th Street. What is the actual setback on that?
Hang on.
Excuse me, Mr.
25 and
Chair.
28 according
I'd
to
like
this
to s-
document.
All right.
I'd like to make a statement for the people in the audience. Okay, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding. It's a dignified process. Everybody will have their opportunity to speak. You're not supposed to be interrupting another speaker. I know when you stand at the podium, you will want the same respect that we are trying to afford other speakers here. So please do not call out. You will have your chance to speak. Thank you.
I don't have, I
It
don't-
says,
I don't- I
the
don't have,
document I've got says 25-foot setback on 130th Street, and a 28-foot setback on 9th Avenue.
correct, but I think he was talking about the rear, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm talking about, between, 130th Street on the southbound side, there's residential, homes over there by 9th Avenue. And I was wondering what the setback is between the, if we're gonna put up that wall and the landscaping and the homes.
42 feet, sir.
42 feet?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have no more questions, thank you.
All right. Before,
Let me follow up on that. 42 feet setback from their property line, 42 feet setback
From the rear property line to the building itself.
to the building itself.
Yes.
So the property probably where the homes are, we're saying 100 feet by 120. Maybe someone, when they get up, they can, will learn how much distance there is between the house itself.
Yes, so
the
if-
backyard, the property line, and then the building.
Yeah, so if our property has 42 feet setback and a typical residential might have 20, 25 feet in the rear, you know, so you're looking at somewhere around 65 to 70 feet between the house and the building
Confused.
itself.
I'm confused.
I think you-
From your property line,
Yes, sir.
where the wall will be,
Yes, sir.
to the residence
Yes.
property line, what's the distance?
Depending on the, I believe my question
Yeah, I don't
was
understand the question,
just
sorry.
that. It would be the distance between the house and the rear of the property.
Yeah, but how many feet?
Well, he just mentioned it could be
Okay, are you
anywhere
asking
from
for the
25
distance
feet
between
to-
a typical home and the property?
No,
Yeah,
no,
okay,
no.
I'm sorry.
Let me
The
clarify.
property lines, I mean, one line touches the other line. The
Yeah,
property
okay,
lines.
okay, thank you. Yes, you're right. Where your wall will be,
Yes.
okay, to the property of the adjoining homes, what's the
Yes.
distance?
0.
The wall would be on the line.
The wall's gonna be on the
It
line.
would be right inside.
So in other words, when I go out on my backyard, if I
Right.
lived there,
Right,
I would look at your wall. It would
Yes.
be right against my property.
unless they have their own wall
There's not gonna
fence.
be a buffer between the wall and that property?
No, there isn't. Property lines touch each other. So they have the
I
right,
understand that, but
Right.
wouldn't the wall be set back a little bit?
Yes.
And no?
yes, I mean, we'll have to set it back for structure to be able to build it.
And then it would be landscaped where,
Then come the trees.
It would be the wall, then the landscaping.
so if I'm a neighbor behind you,
Mhm.
what I'm trying to get at is I'm
Right.
a neighbor behind you, and I'm
Right.
looking at my backyard.
Right.
Okay, there's gonna be a buffer of trees, and then the wall, and then the parking.
The other way around, sir. It would be the wall, then the trees, then the parking.
So the homeowner, that resident, it would be their responsibility to find a way to cover up having to look at that wall every day they wake up and look
If
out
they
the
want,
window.
yeah. Yes.
That's what you're asking.
Who has to cover it up, you or them?
The
Yeah, we
resident.
can't do anything on their property, so they would have to.
No, on their property.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, Ken, they would have to plant bushes
Yeah.
on their property to cover up that wall at their expense.
Staff, I'm sorry, go ahead. You were gonna say something, LeBron.
No, I was gonna say, by code, whenever you have dissimilar land uses, they have to provide a buffer, which is a wall. And the finished side of the wall has to be on the neighbor's side. And if we don't want to have like a blank wall, they can, I'm pretty sure they would agree to provide like vines on the wall, make it look like green.
Yeah,
Yeah, so.
I mean,
so-
yeah,
let's be very clear here. So we want to work with staff in the community to make that wall good looking from both sides. Honestly, we do. So if that means putting vines on it, putting slats on it, putting decoration, the intent is not just to have a barrier. I mean, we want to have the landscaping on whatever side makes the best sense.
Okay.
So,
LA Fitness, when they put up that parking garage over there, poor people were just staring right at it. So subsequently, what happened, they landscaped it
Right.
between them, and we wanna make sure that that's not gonna be the situation again here, that these poor people are gonna be staring at.
we can put some landscaping on the other side. We can't put massive mature trees because they'd be encroaching into their property. But we can definitely work with staff to come up with some landscaping on that side. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, to staff, then that would be, the suggestion is then that property line would not would not be the point as to where the structure of the wall would be built. Rather, it would become a tree line perhaps, rather than, so that means that the wall would have to be set back on your side of the property. I think that would be probably the suggestion that we're
Commissioner, let me
looking at
just
now.
say, we're happy to landscape on the other side of the wall facing the property, but as Mr. Valent indicates, having that be the trees, we're gonna put big trees. There are concerns if it's the trees there, because the roots grow into the other property. If we're talking vines on the walls or bushes or some decorative elements on the wall, that's one thing. There can be some space to have some bushes or things,
When I
but
said
the
tree
mature.
line, I didn't specify, forgive me for saying trees. Foliage would be, I think, the term we would
Yes,
wanna
we don't
use.
wanna, also, we don't wanna, if we can, create something that's gonna be a maintenance problem for our neighbors either.
Correct.
So we wanna be sensitive to that as well.
All right, do we have other questions from the, Jason, go ahead.
Does code allow to place the wall some, like, further distance from the property line?
I'm sorry?
Does the code allow for, I guess, the proposed wall to be shifted more north, or?
No, that's not a code requirement.
It's not a code requirement, I'm saying, does it allow for it, meaning?
I mean, you can build wherever you want to put your wall. If you want to leave a space, but it's still,
It becomes a maintenance thing, because then somebody has to
exactly.
access
So
it
now
on the other
they
side.
won't be able to access that. So the neighbors will probably would be responsible for it if they don't have a fence themselves.
I got you.
There's also a liability issue when you have more than, I mean, it's one thing to have a few bushes, but when you start to have like if you had a couple 3 feet wide strip there, that's a big liability issue that people are walking onto it, and if there's a hole there, or if they trip or something on that. So it's one thing to have enough space for bushes, but we don't want to create some kind of an attractive nuisance either.
Or
Understood.
an alleyway. I mean,
Or
we're
an
not
alley,
looking
yeah.
at.
You don't want to mistake
at-
it
at-
in
at
highway.
an
Now,
alleyway.
Yeah,
Not-
I think we can find a compromise here. I mean, there are ways of putting vines and decorations and shrubs and foliage within a setback area, and that is a setback area that I think can make the wall look at least a little more attractive without having a big liability issue and without having to, make the maintenance all the neighbor's responsibility. I think we can come up with a solution for that.
And my next question has to do with the pickup and drop-off area. So when I look at this, to me, I don't see how a vehicle can circulate around it. To me, it seems as though this is something that the applicant's proposing to try to deal with some of the, to anticipate how some of those operations are going to happen when people come in, so that all the traffic doesn't stack out into the lane. But I just don't see how that. It doesn't seem like a car can circulate around there correctly. But again, I'm assuming this is preliminary.
It is preliminary. We have to still go to DRC, Public Works, and all the other departments to make sure that there's no backing out into the streets and everything like that. So absolutely, if we need to make it a little bit wider or accommodate the lobby a little differently, we absolutely will.
Would that be a two-lane driveway for allowing a vehicle to come in?
I'm not against looking at something like that, I think
Two-
the idea
two wide
there
vehicles.
is that corner wants to feel like a nice feature. I mean, the idea isn't just to have some alley that you drop somebody off, throw them out the car and leave. No, the idea is they want that to be the feature of the property, that corner. So if we make it a little wider, accommodating, and maybe second car stacking in there, I think the owner would be very, very willing to do something like that.
Okay.
Yep.
And my next question: how are you in terms of your parking? Because it seems like I'm seeing here and I'm seeing dead end drive aisles, and I don't see, if you look at the southwest corner of the property, how are people backing out and exiting the facility?
Well, there's a small turnaround there. It's under the trees. You can barely see it, but there is a way to back out and go out there. You're talking about the one in the most extreme southwest corner?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll take a look at that. We'll study that.
And what are the widths on these spaces? These are parking spaces?
They are, yeah. But you're looking at tandem there. That's why they look long and skinny.
Yeah, you said tan. Oh, okay. These are head.
Those are tandem too, stacked
I got you.
tandem. That's why they look longer and skinny.
Then I'm not understanding how
Yeah,
that's going to work.
I don't understand your concept there with your
Ta- ta-
stacking stacked parking?
Let me answer.
Sir, can we,
Yeah,
Let-
Yeah, we got a lot of.
pay
let him-
attention to
let
us.
him
We
address
have any
us
questions.
first. Folks,
We
I
have the
know you wanna
questions.
talk about it,
Yeah.
you're gonna get your chance, but
Okay,
we're
tandem
trying to-
parking
we're trying to get
spaces
some
when you-
clarification that may help you later. Jason, again, I agree with you on, to get some clarity on your stacking
Absolutely.
issue with your parking.
We'll certainly study that. I mean, it was intended to have a certain percentage of tandem parking spaces or stacked parking spaces.
So you're saying a resident parks in front of another and
They
blocks
block
them in?
themselves, they would have to block themselves in, the unit, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, what does code say about that, staff? I mean, I don't think I've seen
There's
that
a
provision.
provision for that in the code.
Is there a certain percentage that's allowed?
I'll tell you exactly.
'Cause
But I mean, again, this is very preliminary. This is, we
No,
don't use CUP here, I mean, but this is, at the DRC, all those things will be taken into account. But our primary analysis didn't really look at the site plan itself. We just, how they meet the standards for the CUP. Yeah, but the code does have provision, and I can share that with you now.
Okay. And again, just so I'm understanding,
There's 2 tandem spaces, limited to a single unit.
Yeah,
That,
you can, yeah.
Mr. Held has
exactly,
the-
that's
has
what
the
it would
answer.
be, for the same unit.
the idea is that
Okay.
when it would be tandem for a given unit, when you
Okay.
have 2-bedroom and you're dealing mostly
it.
with families,
Yeah.
you know, it may be the wife parks inside and then the husband behind her or vice versa, and you deal with that. These are, because it's a condominium, the spaces are dedicated, people aren't gonna buy unless they know that there's enough to accommodate both of them. And so it's tandem by unit,
I get it.
not, you know, you have to hope your neighbor's around.
they're assigned.
Right.
Yeah, you're
This
saying.
is, and this is, I've seen this trend, I think it's become very popular on Miami Beach and also in downtown Miami where they're doing this stacked parking in Broward. are doing it.
And universities, unfortunately.
And then, now how do you accommodate guest parking and what were the number of
So,
spaces?
so because it's a condominium project, not an apartment, there will be assigned spaces. So, for instance, a unit would have a tandem spine front and back, and guest parking would be assigned as well. So the guest would be labeled as guest parking, and they're on, there, it's considered in here.
How many,
How many guest parking spots are there?
To be honest with you, I'll have to get back to you with that number.
5%.
Yeah, 5%,
How many?
It has to be 5%
yes.
on a condo or on any other,
Any multifamily,
and any multiple.
any multifamily.
Can that, once the developer hands that back, or hands that over to a homeowners association, that has to be locked in? The
Yeah.
homeowners association can't change that number, correct?
That's a code item,
Okay, it's a code item.
yeah.
All right.
All right, Jason, do we have any other questions down there?
Just one comment. I do feel that, I know it's been represented that there's a lot of landscaping going to be proposed. It kind of seems like it could be a little more.
We just started meeting with the planner last week, and so before we go to DRC, we were actually taking a little different approach on this. So we're gonna be meeting with the various departments. We've already met with Public Works. We've already met with landscaping with Ms. Plass. We're also gonna be meeting with Fire before we submit for DRC. We don't wanna just submit and say this is what we want.
That was gonna be my next question. Well,
Yep.
how's the fire truck gonna get in and out?
What's that? We'll be meeting to them to talk about the turnaround
Yeah,
radius.
because I don't see how a fire truck can come in and out this facility. I don't see how it's gonna happen.
Well,
I guess that's
That's our challenge, right?
that's your challenge.
I
That's
gotta
your
have some
design
challenges.
challenge. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Bob?
Just an observation, if I can. I think what you're hearing a lot of is sensitivity. This is the first development of its type with the NRO limits that were put in place 6 months ago or 5 months ago that's come before us. And I got to be honest with you guys, I think I was asleep at the switch for a minute when we were doing all of that because of the hundreds of pages and hundreds of things we had to talk about. I missed this one. Because 6 months ago, I know everybody said you're entitled to 90 bonus units and the like. That really wasn't the case earlier. There was a maximum, for a project this size, there were maximum floating units, a total of 35 units. Was the maximum that could be put in place in a project this size with an underlying designation of R2 or low density in the NRO. And that would have been 35 units in whatever size that project would have been. And that was it. And now suddenly we're at 90. And I think everybody here is trying to be very cautious about what's going to be built in a residential neighborhood. You've got a lot of single-family homes that bought a home there because they were in a residential neighborhood. And now with this NRO overlay, I can put a high-rise next door to you, and there's no setbacks and there's no nothing. I gotta hope to God you landscape it properly so it's not that offensive. So I think people are very cautious about making sure you do all those things if this project goes through.
And rightfully.
Because I want to be very sensitive to the people who have spent their money to buy real estate in that neighborhood with the hope that the real estate will be worth something more someday. And they don't have to sell it to somebody to turn it into a condo and then go find some other place to live.
I would agree with everything you said, and also, we do want to meet with the community association as well. Before we get to the next hearing, we want to listen and try to address these things more than just for 2 minutes on a landscaping issue. I think these all deserve studies, walls, features, so that someone's not looking at their backyard and just seeing an ugly wall. I couldn't agree more. I wouldn't want to see that.
I want to echo Mr. Bashan's feelings about this. I have to admit, I think when this came about, I overlooked the whole setup with the NRO, never, I guess, thinking that we would be faced with an R2 district that had homes in it, and all of a sudden there's an overlay placed over this neighborhood saying that, well, okay, we can now allow development within this that's not what it was originally designed for, and that was for single-family homes. And I have to admit to everyone here, I did not see this coming. I honestly did not realize that we had a situation where this neighborhood would be affected as such. I think it's I think we're on a slippery slope here when we open the door for development. We say that we're messing with an R2 district. I live in an R2 district. Everybody else here either has a R1 or an R3. That just means that that's single-family homes in that district. And it seems to me that this has kind of been overlooked, or I don't know if it was purposely done. I don't think it was, but this one got by us, I think, and I honestly don't know how we can address this to make all the parties amenable to it, because it is written in the code. Now, this is a part of our land use ordinance that we have to kind of comply to, and to not have it challenged legally. I hope that this doesn't open up other R2s and R1s and R3s to something like this happening, just because we can throw an overlay over it and then declare that we can have open season on development.
Commissioner Ernst, let me just say, and also Commissioner Pachon, that was practically the first words out of my mouth. And we understand this is different. Frankly, this owner did not have any involvement in your process. This isn't somebody who tried to get their property to have some kind of treatment. This has been in the works for a long time before these people owned this property. And this is what the city has decided it wanted. The NRO is not that big. It's transitional.
No,
it's near West Dixie Highway. We're half a block, literally, off West Dixie. But again, we're very mindful that this has not come before you, and we understand that it's a surprise maybe to you and maybe to neighbors. And it's one of the reasons, I know some people in the audience don't agree, but it's one of the reasons we've tried to show tremendous restraint. Not 104 units, 67 units. Not 130 feet, 74 feet. A lot of landscaping, access to mass transit, we hope that the bonus units we're getting because of the access to Dixie Highway, to bike racks, to things like that, will help lessen the demand on automobiles and the traffic coming in and out. This is a place for people who want to be able to access mass transit and do so from home ownership. I do want to segue also from one thing particularly that was just said by Mr. Valent. And we are planning, we've approached leaders in the community, and there's going to be an open meeting on this before this ever goes to the City Commission. I believe that it's going to be at I think the Griffing Center, and I believe the date is December 20th at 7 p.m. And we invite everybody here, and you can come and tell us, other than whatever happens tonight, tell us what you think. This developer wants to be a good neighbor and a good corporate citizen for this city, and I can't say that, I understand some people would rather it stay a vacant lot, and that's not something that the owners had in mind when they bought it, but we are willing to try to do what we can do, and I think we've already demonstrated that, because this is scaled down, it's set back, it's centered as much as possible in the property. If you look, you'll see the building itself is moved as far from the south property line as can still permit parking to go around there, so it's further from the residences. We're trying here, and I know it's new. I'd like to just ask for a couple of brief comments for Jamie Akbas, the owner's representative, an engineer on the project, to also be involved in helping it come up out of the ground.
All right, state your name and address for the record, sir.
My name is Jamie Akbas. I'm the owner rep for this project. I'm a state certified general contractor and a structural engineer. First, I would like to say that the city staff have been very kind and helpful since we started this process. So I would like to thank them for their service. I also wanted to note, wanted everyone in this room to know that Mike Lyons and I are extremely excited about this project and want to do many more in this city, in North Miami. Our intention, first of all, I would like to bring this to everyone's intention. First of all, we are not bringing a affordable housing into the community. This is one of the most modern design building in the North Miami. That's, I would like to state it here, okay? Anyone in this room, if you guys look at the design that we have, can show a second sample that building in the city of North Miami, we will cancel this building. This is the most modern building in the community. Secondly, the fence that we're talking about, excuse me, the wall was one of the options. I mean, of course, we have to go through the construction documents from the plan review board. So we'll go through, but the wall was one of the options. It could, it could be many. There's thousands of fence that we can put in this property, and also all the fence that's between the properties, adjacent lots, they are right on the property lines. Every single person's home, including the board members and us, everybody looking at the neighbor's fence. This is common. This is common for everyone. You're looking at your neighbor's fence. I'm looking at my neighbor's fence. This is not just for this specific project. This is everybody's property. You're looking at your neighbor's fence or wall, whatever they have. This is not a new thing to the people who lives here. I myself also own a property in city of North Miami, and I don't believe that the property values is not going to go down because we are bringing something nice and modern to the community. This is going to increase the property values. So So we will also be registering at the Chamber of Commerce in North Miami, and so that we can continue to advocate on behalf of the North Miami business community, and we will be also utilizing the local contractors and labor force in North Miami. So this is going to create also jobs into the community, and basically that's it. So we appreciate everybody's time and consideration for this project, and you can share the in our enthusiasm for this enhancement in this amazing neighborhood. Thank you, everyone. Any question for me?
Any questions for the engineer?
Yeah, I beg to differ with you. I don't look at my neighbor's fence, I look at landscaping. Okay, and if you want to be a good neighbor, like I think it was Teddy Roosevelt said, the good neighbor policy, you'll make sure that you have adequate landscaping up there where the project is going to be desirable,
Correct.
and, you know, be a good neighbor. Go the extra step. Put extra money in, you know.
No, we
I-
will. We will do.
I got a concern here. How do we get by if we know that 750 square feet is the minimum that we're supposed to have? How do we get by with,
Well, we haven't.
Again, this is not a site plan review. This is a conditional use permit for the number of units. What we're reviewing tonight is the number of units. They will come to the DRC site plan review, will also be approved by the city council. So it's not just staff approving this less than 750 units.
Okay,
No,
let-
this
let-
is not what we're doing.
let me make a suggestion, and maybe the board feels the same way I do and the citizens. This is our first hearing, and when I see something like this, I get nervous. And this should be corrected before we even come to bat. Before we get up to base and throw that ball, the schematics, the plans, they should be a little bit more detailed. And this has been a problem with everybody coming up before the planning commission. Hey, hear me out, Counselor. It would have been good that this was reviewed. You, the engineer, the developer, know that, hey, this is the minimum, 750 square feet is the minimum that we're gonna allow for, you know, and it just doesn't put us on edge. It just gives us a bad feeling. Maybe I'm talking.
Commissioner Each, the only thing I'll say is that, as was just pointed out, we're here today for two things. We're here for the conditional use, which is required,
Conditional use, that's,
Right.
I'm glad you mentioned.
and
Yeah.
for the approval of the bonus. Once those two things have happened, that's through you, after our meeting with the community, and after it goes to the city council, and the city council approves it, we then, because you can't really draw these final plans without knowing how many units you're gonna have. I mean, it's impossible to draw plans without an approval as to the number of units. Once the number of units are approved, and we know that's what we've got, the engineer and the architect then prepare detailed plans, which go to staff for comments, the Development Review Committee, the DRC. When we've satisfied staff, we then go to the city council for site plan approval, and that'll be every one of those little details. And in fact, it won't even be when it comes to the city council, it'll have to satisfy staff through DRC first. Now, we are jumping the gun here to try to get this done in the best way we can by starting DRC meetings and starting the staff meetings even before we have this body or city council approval for the number of units, so we can, make it as good as we can, as early as we can. The owner has decided that they're gonna take a risk of having to pay to have stuff that we're doing preliminarily redone when we get comments from staff, if there's anything that comes up along the way. They're willing to do that because we're trying to go the extra mile. But the point you make about the landscaping, that's a done deal. I said that, I think, on the record. I wanted that to be clear, and we accept that. We understand. We'll make sure that it's something that is as nice as can be. The wall is not a tremendously high wall, it's just a screen so people don't, we want to be sure people don't look at cars. So, you know, we'll landscape it. But these things that you're talking about, you're 100% right, but we can't final those plans till we get the approval of the number of units. That's why we're a little bit, you know, if it looks like we're not done, it's because we're not done. And we want to not be too far ahead, by the way, to hear what the community says, so that it's, instead of sitting there looking at people saying, sorry, can't do that, we got this drawn already, we want to be open to input from the community. That's why we're having a meeting with the community. And if somebody says, gee, can you do this instead, we can say, yeah, we can still incorporate that, not, sorry, that's a done deal already.
With what you heard us, that we brought up, are you seeing that any kind of modification may have to be put into place that would lower or increase the DUs at all that you're asking for? Because we've asked for some changes on setback, driveway width, other things, concerns of parking. From what you're taking from this, the architect or you, do you envision that there would be a change in the DUs that you're asking for us to give you tonight?
I don't, but I'm not ultimately the one who's got to make it fit and comply with code. I'm relying on the fact that the architect indicates that what has been discussed can be done, so I'll defer to him.
First of all, you haven't brought up anything that hasn't already been brought up either by neighbors or by staff or by our own internal people. So talking about the drop-off area, talking about the guest parking, talking about the landscaping wall, we've had lots of conversations about the type of wall. We really wanted to hear from the community, quite honestly.
Good, okay.
But,
Yeah.
but again,
Yeah.
does that affect
No
your
impact
your
that I've heard
design that
tonight.
you come with a concept here?
Right.
And so we pretty much will have to take it for granted that that concept won't change, or that concept will change now because of the fact that
We have not heard anything. I have not heard anything so far that's not reasonable and that will impact the project so far.
Can I just make this observation? I was looking through the notes on parking. You've got 58 two-bedroom units, and the building averages 1.3 parking spaces per unit.
Right.
So 58 people, if they get 2 spots, you're a little over the line, and there's nothing left for the one-bedroom units or the guests. So how does that all work? And then you've got tandem parking, where Mr. Geller explains that you get 2 people that have 2 spots.
Right.
I don't know that anybody's got 2 spots. I mean, or certainly not enough people to allow tandem parking to exist around the property.
Right. We're going to have to work out how to assign the spaces. As far as that goes, we are within, there was a percentage reduction allowed for certain things that we did, the green buildings and things like that. So we're right on that line right now. But the tandem parking thing has to be resolved as far as the condominiums, like when people purchase a unit, how they purchase two full units, to get 1 unit alone, that's going to have to be worked out. So absolutely, as people are buying units, they're going to have to work out how they buy their unit, non-tandem versus tandem, things like that.
Because everybody that can't park there is parking in these guys' front yards.
Well, no, I mean, that's, you know, they're not allowed to. So we understand that they're not allowed to, and we're going to be very clear in informing
I'm not
people
sure
that they
that's
can't
true,
do
though.
that. Having said that, though, let me say the other thing, Commissioner, is at $250 or $275 a unit for presumably the 1-bedrooms, this is designed for people who want to use transit. This is designed, and that's one of the things, it's designed for people.
I want to
who-
use transit, but that
Well-
doesn't mean it's available.
But that's the point. That's why you have an NRO along the transportation corridor. It's not across, it's not citywide. It's for somebody who wants to be able to walk half a block and get to a public transit location that has already a covered shelter in existence, or ride their bike because they're working in town. So we are hoping that there will be people who will be willing to save a little money on getting 2 spaces that can get by with 1, because one person in the family is going to take transit to work or ride a bike to work, and they can pay a little less money and get a place that has only 1 space. That's the whole concept here, that's the way you develop mass transit, is by creating a ridership for it, and this is something that's affordable for somebody, that it's designed to be on the transit corridor and to have improvements. So
I'm just suggesting that you've showed these diagrams with tandem parking.
Yes, sir.
And the answer was people have two cars, they
Yes,
get two
sir.
spots.
Yes, sir.
They're assigned and they're dedicated.
Right.
Well, that doesn't seem to be the case at all.
Oh, no,
Because
it is,
we-
I'm sorry, if that's, I'm sorry if I did not explain that adequately. People they purchase spots. If you buy one, you don't pay as much as if you buy two. If you buy two tandem spots, that's tandem will be assigned to people in the same unit. It doesn't work otherwise.
I agree.
But you have a husband and wife, or you have somebody with that's a single parent with an adult child even, and that's why they have a two-bedroom. Mostly, we assume it'll be people with smaller kids, but it could be a single parent with an adult child. You can have tandem, but you can't have tandem if you have to rely on some neighbor. But if you can get by with one car, that's going to be a family car, as people used to do, because you're literally half a block from where the bus stop is. You're literally, in a place that has bike lockers and bike racks built in. This is something that someone could buy and maybe save a couple bucks and say, I can get by with one parking space because I'm going to use this, even if whether it's a single individual or even if it's a couple. But again, we've got to make it work. We've got to come up with the spaces. We've got to comply with all this. And I just want to say this, and I understand that there's cynicism in our society at large today about anything that anybody says about anything. This is the first project that this developer has done in this area. They don't want a bad reputation. They don't want people to come out and say, these guys didn't do what they said. They don't want to come back in front of you for another project and have somebody here say, hey, you told us on this project you were going to do this and you didn't do it. They want, not everyone doesn't keep their word, and this group wants to, and we're willing to be bound. They're trying to do this consistent with what the city has said this district is going to be, in the best, most sensitive way possible, to hear the community and to be good neighbors. They're trying to do that. They intend to do that. They want a reputation for doing that. There's nothing about this presentation that's take it or leave it, that this is what we're doing. And we want the commission, the community, and the council to hold us to the promises we're making, and to see that some people are willing to go the extra mile and not squeeze every nickel to develop a reputation and to be able to be looked upon favorably for the next project or two. That concludes our presentation, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Geller.